Aloha kakahiaka. That means good morning in Hawaiian. I hope you're doing well this Saturday morning. Welcome to the broadcast. If you're watching live, please make sure to pop in and say aloha. Let me know where you're coming from to say hello. And if you're watching via replay, thank you for taking the time to sit back for a moment and grab a cup of coffee or smoothie or juice or water, whatever you have, and take a moment to just kick back and relax while we catch up. Yeah. I want to say hello to some of the folks that are coming in live on the live stream. Good morning, Kelly. How are you, my dear? Good to see you here. Thanks so much. Teresa, this is a rare joy, and I'm so glad you were taking a moment to pop in and say hi. Hello, my dear. Love to you and Bailey. Good morning, Sherry. My faithful friend, Sherry, up in Fargo, North Dakota. Welcome. It's good to see you here, my friend. Thanks so much. Good morning, my sweet girl. My daughter, Savannah, here. Good to see you. Thanks so much. Guys, thanks for popping in and saying hello. This lets other people know that we are live. So if they want to come on and comment, they can. Say hello to everybody. Always love to catch you here. So today is a very special day because it is officially Hawaiian Statehood Day. And so I have one of my favorite, oh, the glare is so much. Can you see it because of the glare? It says Aloha Hawaii, 50th state. And this is kind of an old style looking cup, souvenirs from back in the day, like the 60s when I grew up. But on August 21st, 1959, Hawaii became officially the 50th state added to the United States. So we're going to talk story and catch up and learn a little bit about the history of my island home. If you've never, tell me in the comments what you think of, what you know of Hawaii. Right? What are some of the traditional things that when you think of the island or you think of Hawaii, what are things that you picture? Oh, by the way, look at this Hawaiian hair, right? So, I'm like, let's see, I finished my treatment June of last summer. So I'm officially 1 year out from my cancer treatment and look at my hair. Oh, yes. I am thanking my Heavenly Father for this ethnic hair that I have. It's growing back full and healthy, and I'm still trying to learn how to style it at this length. But, what can Hawaiian do for you? Good morning, Whitney. So, girlfriend, it's hot, and you have like hurricane season bearing down upon you. Steamy and gorgeous here. You're in the dungeon of your very old psych hospital, auditing medical charts, and so happy for the company and conversation. Oh, Whitney, my dearest friend. Listen, I'm going to just stop and salute my hero friend, Whitney, right now. A nurse working in a hospital on the front lines. These people are on the front lines of dealing with all levels of all kind people. I am praying for you, and my friend, I'm saluting you. I hope you know that when you think of me, I'm in your corner cheering for you of everything you're doing, the amazing work you're doing, the tough ass work you're doing. But there's anyone I know who could do it and be a badass at it, it's definitely you. I salute you, my friend. Yes, indeed. You miss the clear water and the food. The food. Savannah thinks of the food, the Hawaiian food. And if you noticed at the beginning of the intro video, which my daughter produces, by the way, Ono grinds. Ono grinds. And what you were seeing right there is a standard traditional Hawaiian plate lunch that we serve to people who come, the tourists who come that want to taste of Hawaii. It looks so good, right? It does. It looks so good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Listen, I am blessed. I'm thankful. I am blessed and I am thankful. I can't tell you, can I say it a few more times? How thankful I am to have been able to listen to the doctors who guided me. I didn't try to self-inject myself with anything. I didn't take Milo's heartworm treatment and think I could ingest it to treat my cancer. Mm, that's for a different show. Today, we are talking about Hawaii's official Statehood Day. Now, typically, this holiday, and it's a federal holiday, so it's a national holiday. They celebrate in Hawaii, but they celebrate on the third Friday of August. So technically, yesterday's Happy Aloha Friday was when they celebrate Hawaii Statehood Day. But the actual date that it became effective of Hawaii being a state is August 21st, which fell on today, my broadcast. So I thought, what a great day to enlighten you a little bit, to share a little bit of Hawaii's history, how we got to and it took 66 years. Do you know it took 66 years for Hawaii to finally be admitted to the States? So I'm going to be sharing a little bit of info with you. I'm going to be showing you some pictures, and I've got some book reads, some recommendations for you if you want to learn a little bit more about Hawaiian culture and the history. And this is something that's important for not just Hawaiian people to know. It's important for the mainland Americans to understand who their 50th state is, the indigenous people that were there, because this state is 2,000 miles from the West Coast. So there was some kerfuffle about the state not being admitted because, well, it's not part of the contiguous state, so how could it really be a state? Same thing with Alaska. You know, Alaska started out as a Russian colony. So, you know, and Alaska and Russia, I mean, Alaska and Hawaii were vying for who was going to get in and be admitted as a state. Okay. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of history with you today. You know, if you got things to do and you need to go, that's fine. But if you really want to take the time to sit and listen to this, as I share with you a little bit of my Hawaiian culture. So usually on this day, it's an official state holiday. So most government offices, public schools, everything, they're all closed because they observe this as official holiday. Now, here's a little bit of interesting information. Although 94% of Hawaii's voters were in favor of statehood in 1959, Statehood Day is controversial, especially among Native Hawaiian people. I've tried to tell people before, and you know, some people when they go to Hawaii, depending on where they are, they really may not encounter this, but you might. So just if you go into this being aware of the fact that most local Native Hawaiian people, they don't like tourists. And they don't like all these people coming to their islands. Right now, Hawaii is in crisis because of COVID. All of the people that suddenly started coming, Hawaii wasn't even open past 50% capacity to handle the load. So everywhere, you know, you heard on the news about the rental cars being right? You couldn't find one. And then hotel rooms starting at $500 to $700 a night. And plus they didn't have enough staff to handle the resorts and the hotels comparable to what they were before COVID. So this made it harder. So really going to enjoy the islands was not enjoying the islands because you were dealing with what we're dealing with here on the States, only over there. And Hawaii is limited. They can't go to another state to take their sick people if they're at capacity, right? So this is hard. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit, tidbits and highlights. I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as I can without sounding like a boring history lesson, right? You bet, girl. Absolutely. Listen, always, Whitney, always. Happy Statehood Day. Good morning, Mary. Great to have you here. Thanks so much. Always good to see you. And I am going to be checking my good morning, Sylvia, Laura, all of the people on my personal profile. Their comments are not generating here, but I am monitoring them. And Savannah, if you could keep an eye on them too for me as well. Thank you, honey. I appreciate that. Okay, so Good morning, Mary. So glad you're here. So, Hawaii has dealt with the influence of foreign powers since it was started. Now, King Kamehameha the Great, so this is King Kamehameha the First, he was in the process of conquering the Hawaiian Islands with the purpose of unification from 1792 to 1794. Before they were all united under one, each island had its own chief or king, right? King Kamehameha wanted to unify all the islands under one ruler, that being him. And so this is what he did. So while he was doing that, while he was battling and facing invasion from the other islands to Oahu and trying to organize all of that, he placed the islands under British protection under the authority of a man named George Vancouver. George Vancouver was the commander of the second British exploration ship that came after Cook, Captain James Cook, came to the islands and discovered them for the first time. So this is George Vancouver. He was commander over the second British exploration, okay? So in 1810, finally, so imagine, King Kamehameha starts in 1792 to 1794. He's trying to do that. And by 1810, so this is a much longer time, right? With the surrender of the island of Kauai was the final one. The Hawaiian Islands were united under a single ruler for the first time. So this is 1810, right? And if I could draw, usually I'm thinking of teaching this as a class and drawing a timeline, right? So you could see and line it up with other things that were going on in the formation of the United States. So this is 1810. Now, on December 23rd, 1826, the Kingdom of Hawaii, under the rule of King Kamehameha III, his name was Kauikeaole, and the United States, they both entered into what was called the Treaty of Friendship. This treaty acknowledged Hawaii as an independent and foreign governed entity, right? So it gave a legitimacy, because before Hawaii was just, they were a tribe of people that were living isolated from the rest of the world. And once explorers discovered it and people started coming from Europe, they had to form their own government and become a recognized entity on the global scale. Yeah, you get that? So just like we recognize Great Britain and France and Germany, all these, Hawaii had to create that. This is 1826. So this treaty directly acknowledged Hawaii as an independent foreign governed entity. Now, King Kauikeaole enacted the first kingdom of Hawaii in a constitution in 1840. The new constitution established a Western-styled government similar to what we had on the mainland. It featured a House of Nobles and a House of Representatives chosen by the people. So this system is similar to the two-body system that was used in the United Kingdom, okay? Now, a judicial system with a Supreme Court was also established. So this was definitely a step away from the old laws, kapu laws that the tribal chiefs had. This is enacting a formal system of government. So the first constitution of Hawaii begins with the words, God hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell on the earth in unity. I'm going to read that again. God hath made one blood all nations of men to dwell on the earth in unity. So all people who were born in Hawaii were citizens of the Hawaiian kingdom, regardless of their race or ethnicity. If they were Korean, if they were Chinese, if they were Japanese, if they were born and living there. And immigrants were afforded easy naturalization and full political rights. So they come to the islands, they become a contributing citizen of the island. They became a citizen of the Hawaiian kingdom with rights to vote. Now, the first occupation by a foreign power, so the first actual occupation of a foreign power on the Hawaiian Islands was the UK, was Great Britain. In 1843, the British Navy, under the command of Rear Admiral Richard Thomas, occupied Hawaii for 5 months. After negotiations between the admiral and the king, sovereignty was restored to Hawaii's king, via He'olelo Lokomaikai, which means an act of grace, on July 31st, 1843. And on this day, King Kauikeaole spoke a prayer of thanksgiving, which included the quote, Ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono. Israel Kamaka Viva Ole made that a song. It's a beautiful rendition of the song. And for the Native Hawaiian people, every time even I listen to it, I cry because we know that it is a prayer that was spoken by our king. It says the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. And this statement would later become the Hawaiian state motto. So this day was called Restoration Day, and it was a very festive occasion with its own anthem written to mark the celebration. And so Great Britain, with a joint declaration with France on November 28, 1843, guaranteed Hawaii's independence. They would not be ruled or taken over by Great Britain. So on December 20th, 1849, the U.S. and the Kingdom of Hawaii signed a Treaty of Friendship, Commerce, Navigation, and Extradition. And under this treaty, Americans were able to live in Hawaii and be permanent residents. Now, here's where things get a little tricky. In 1872, King Kamehameha V died without naming a successor to the throne. Article 22 of the Constitution directs the Legislative Assembly to elect an ali'i of the kingdom as successor. Ali'i means high leader. These usually would be considered royalty. Like if the Queen Elizabeth died with no heirs, we've learned that about the British monarchy. If someone died with no heirs, then they would have to pick someone from the bloodline, a cousin or someone that had to be related in blood, to the throne and declare them their successor. So Hawaii's first elected king, William Lunalilo, reigned for only 1 year before his death. In 1874, King David Kalakaua is elected. King David Kalakaua is the person who began the Merry Monarch Festival that you've seen me talk about, that you've seen me share about. David Kalakaua was the one that created that festival. I'm just trying to give you a little familiar check on that. So in 1875, King Kalakaua signed what was called the Reciprocity Treaty. And I think I have, let's see if I have a picture of it here. I believe I have a picture of the document. Let's see if I can find it here. Here it is. Yes, I do. All right. There we go. The Treaty of Reciprocity between the United States of America and the Hawaiian Kingdom. This treaty would establish free trade with the U.S., giving Hawaiian products such as sugarcane duty-free access to the U.S. market. Okay, so this is opening trade negotiations with the United States. Reciprocally, the U.S. agriculture products and manufactured goods were able to enter Hawaiian ports duty-free. Now we got things coming into Hawaii from the mainland, things that they'd never had before, and exports were going out of resources from the Hawaiian Islands. So the Reciprocity Treaty greatly expanded Hawaii's agricultural industry. This treaty was only originally intended to last for a duration of 7 years. On December 6, 1884, the United States and the Kingdom of Hawaii signed a Reciprocity Convention, which extended the 1875 Treaty of Reciprocity. And this allowed the U.S. to use and occupy Pearl Harbor. And the U.S. gained lands that would eventually become the Pearl Harbor Naval Base that you are familiar with. On July 6, 1887, the Honolulu Rifles Militia, in association with the Hawaiian League, and I'll tell you a little bit more about who the Hawaiian League was, held King Kalakaua at gunpoint and forced him to sign the Bayonet Treaty. A new cabinet was appointed, established primarily to write a new constitution that reduces the judicial powers of the monarchy and place executive powers in the hands of the cabinet. This constitution stripped away all native Hawaiian land rights and gave the vote to foreign landowners. In 1891, Princess Lydia Kamakaeha, sister of Kalakaua, succeeds to the throne as Queen Liliuokalani. She considers drafting a new constitution to address the extreme voting restrictions that the Bayonet Constitution imposes on Native Hawaiians and Hawaiian-born citizens. Voter restriction against its native peoples. I wonder who would do such a thing. After failing to get her new constitution through the legislature, Liliuokalani planned to enact it by royal decree on January 14, 1893. 1893 is a pivotal year. This is when the Hawaiian monarchy falls. It's literally invaded and taken over. So at the start of 1893, the Kingdom of Hawaii had foreign legations, which were diplomatic missions from many countries in Honolulu. It included not only the United States, it was the Great Britain, of course, Portugal, France, and Japan. Now, the Kingdom of Hawaii had its own representatives abroad in Washington, D.C., London, Paris, Lima. The Kingdom of Hawaii consulates were established in over 25 foreign states, including the Philippines, Canada, Australia, Germany, China, and Mexico. We had embassies, if you will, in different countries. So we had negotiations and diplomatic, interactions with several countries. Now, despite the well-established diplomatic relationships of so many foreign powers, a cabal of European and American businessmen, with the support of the U.S. military forces, staged a coup to overthrow the Hawaiian kingdom and deposed the Queen in January of 1893. Their purpose was to annex Hawaii to the United States as a means to further their business interests. They called themselves the Committee of Safety, and with many of the ranks coming from the previous Hawaiian League, and these were white businessmen that came in. The sugar cane plantations were a huge moneymaker. This was going to import sugar into the United States on a scale that had not been seen before. Now, the coup concluded on January 17, 1893, when Queen Liliuokalani yielded her authority to avoid bloodshed of her people. She said, "I yield my authority until such time as the government of the United States shall, upon the facts being presented to it, undo the action of its representatives and reinstate me." A provisional government controlled by the Committee of Safety was then instituted pending annexation to the United States. In 1894, the Committee of Safety declared themselves the Republic of Hawaii. They said, this is who we are. These are who our leaders. They established a provisional government and appointed Sanford B. Dole as president of the Republic of Hawaii. The Constitution of the new Republic of Hawaii restricted voting, with prospective voters required to fulfill the following requirements. Be male, so no females were allowed. At least 20 years old, have lived in Hawaii for at least a year and be a registered voter, to swear allegiance to the provisional government, and to have paid their taxes for 1893. So this excluded all Chinese and Japanese residents from becoming citizens who were previously citizens of the Hawaiian kingdom. Remember, didn't matter what race or ethnicity you were there living, you were part of the community, you were welcome, e komo mai, and you were made a citizen. This now restricted that. On August 7th, 1894, President Grover Cleveland formally recognized this new Republic of Hawaii. And in 1895, a revolution to restore the monarchy proved unsuccessful. Queen Liliuokalani was imprisoned in Iolani Palace, and while under house arrest, she signed a document formally abdicating her throne on January 24th, 1895. And now begins the process of annexing Hawaii to the United States. So if you're already not exhausted from hearing that, let's go on a little bit. So I'm going to move you through this last part and bring you up to 1959. In 1897, three groups of Native Hawaiian peoples organized petitions and drives to protest annexation and restore the Hawaiian monarchy. A delegation of the groups traveled to Washington, D.C. to present their petitions to President McKinley and the United States Congress. The contingency submits the anti-annexation petition, which is read and accepted by the Senate. In 1898, the Hawaiian Annexation Treaty did not achieve the required number of votes and was not ratified by the U.S. Senate. Following this Senate decision, the U.S. declared war on Spain, and Hawaii officially became a strategic military location. President McKinley signed the Newlands Resolution annexing Hawaii to the United States. It was passed in both houses of Congress on July 6, 1898. And with this approval from Congress, the Republic of Hawaii ceded the sovereignty of the Hawaiian Islands, as well as its title to public lands, to the United States. The last Hawaiian flag to fly in Hawaii was lowered at 12 noon on August 12, 1898, and the United States flag was raised in its place. On April 30th, 1900, this is establishing Hawaii as now a U.S. territory. We're still not an official state. We're just annexing it. We're adding this land, taking it over, basically, and making it now a part. So Hawaii becomes a territory. Congress passed the Organic Act, which established the Hawaiian territorial government. Honolulu is named the capital of the territory of Hawaii. The title of Sanford Dole is changed from president to governor. Those residing in Hawaii prior to August 12, 1898, became citizens of the territory of Hawaii. Voting and property rights mirrored those found on the U.S. continent. Elected in 1902, Prince Jonah Kuhio Kalanianaole served for 20 years as the Hawaiian delegate to the United States Congress. On December 7, 1941, Japan bombs Pearl Harbor, and martial law was declared. Now, under martial law, governors lose their administrative powers, so the territorial constitution was suspended, and the legislature and Supreme Court of the state dissolved. Martial law lasted until 1944, all during World War II. So the island was under martial law and used as a strategic point for World War II. In 1945, the territory of Hawaii is placed under Article 73 of the United Nations Charter as a non-self-governing territory under the administration of the United States. I'm going to bring you up to 1959. So by the time that Hawaii was admitted as a state, it had been occupied by the United States for 66 years. Remember going back to 1893? 66 years, Hawaii was occupied by people other than their own native peoples in representation for government. In 1959, the U.S. Congress passed the Hawaii Admission Act in March of 1959. I'm going to pull up a little picture here to kind of show you. Here we go. In 1959, the U.S. Congress passed the Hawaii Admission Act in March, which admitted Hawaii as a state of the Union on August 21st, 1959. The act was signed into law by President Dwight D. Eisenhower, and it transferred the United States title for most of Hawaii's public lands to the state as a public trust. Some of the lands governed by this trust are to be used for the betterment of the conditions of the Native Hawaiians as defined by the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. Certain lands are retained by the federal government for defense and for other federal government uses. When my family was in Hawaiian and going up the western side of Oahu up to the North Shore, there's a section of land. You cannot go any further. You cannot walk and go, or there's no road driving around that way. So you either have to go across Oahu to the valley and go up North Shore, or you have to go all the way around the freeway goes all around the island up to the North Shore. But you can't go that western corner because that's federal land. It's used by the military. Sometimes when you buy a house, depending on where you buy, you have to lease the land. You sign like a 99-year lease of the land, and you pay a fee for that because those lands are retained for Native Hawaiian people. So some of certain lands are retained, others are used for federal use. In 1963, and this is a year, so 1959, Hawaii is 62 years old. I was born 3 years later. So it's very different. It's very different. You know, when I grew up, it felt more like a country than it did a state. It was brand new. So in 1963, Congress passes an act that allows lands retained by the federal government to be returned to the state if such lands are declared unnecessary for federal purposes. The former flag of the Kingdom of Hawaii is adopted as the flag of the state of Hawaii. August 21st is recognized as Hawaii Statehood Day. And if you look at the flag, I have a picture of the flag. Let me see. If you were to look up, I'm going to look up the Hawaiian flag. Hold on. I don't have a picture. Hold up. And find a good image. Oh, nice. They got Hawaiian. They got board shorts with the Hawaiian flag. That's nice. Let's see if I can find a good picture. That's a good one, yeah. I'll pull it up on the screen here so you can see. Take the screen. No, that is not me holding the paper, but I can tell you that most of my cousins look like that. We all look like that when we were little. It's just the standard Hawaiian way to look, right? Look, my hair looks even like the same kind of cut. Okay, so let me pull up the screen so you can see what I'm looking at here. Where is my Hawaiian flag? Flag of Hawaii, there it is. Okay. Always takes too long. So I pulled it up in Wikipedia. There's the picture. You notice I'm going to click on the picture so you can see better. There you go. That's big. Yeah. Okay. That's the Hawaiian flag. You notice it resembles the Union Jack because we were first occupied by Great Britain. So August 21st, and that's today. But that was 1959. Yeah. So here's another interesting date that happened, because now you have this history. You have a little history lesson now of giving you a brief timeline, and you can research all of this. You can look up online. If you look up Hawaiian Statehood Day or history behind Hawaiian Statehood Day, you can find a little bit more information. I'll be sharing links on my page and on my profile. I'll share them in the comment thread so that you can go back and look, check into some of these if this is interesting to you. But I can tell you that one thing that was very important to the Hawaiian people, was very important when this happened, was in 1993. And in 1993, something special happened. President Clinton at the time signed into law something called Public Law 103-150. And this was an apology, and a formal apology for the United States' role in the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom 100 years earlier, right? So remember 1893, it started. President Clinton signed this in 1993 on the 100-year anniversary of when the kingdom was overthrown, and for the deprivation of the rights of Native Hawaiians to self-govern. So the apology states, whereas it is properly and timely for the Congress on the occasion of the impending 100th anniversary of the event to acknowledge the historic significance of the illegal overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii and to express its deep regret to the Native Hawaiian people. This was huge. Would it restore any of the damage that was done to our nation and to the people? You want to know why there's an underlying resentment towards uh, Caucasian people? This is why. So President Clinton signed this into law, formally recognizing this as part of our United States historical timeline, acknowledging this. Imagine if we were to do this for other indigenous peoples of our nation who have been similarly treated. So here's something interesting. Remember I told you that Hawaii and Alaska were vying for statehood at the same time. So I found something really interesting that I wanted to share with you because I found this myself and I was pretty amazed because I had to find this on the United States Archives. I went to the National Archives to find this. This is a brochure from 19, hold on, I'm going to remove this. Let's take this out. Let me show this. This is a brochure. This is a cover of a brochure. Notice it says Hawaii, 49th state. Now, this is how bad Hawaii was trying to get itself, recognized. I mean, we are, okay, you've annexed us now. Let us be a part of your nation, right? Let us be an official recognized part of the nation. Well, so this was a brochure from a group of students in Hawaii who wanted to share that they wanted to be recognized, that they wanted to be a part of the Hawaii. So I know it's hard for you to see on the screen, but I'm going to read it a little bit to you. So this is a message from, this is the official brochure for the Associated Students of the University of Hawaii, 1946. And this is a message from the president. His name was Calvin Ontai. Okay. He says, "Aloha, fellow student. No doubt your student body is aware of the fact that the territory of Hawaii is asking Congress for admission into the Union as a state. For a period of over 40 years as a territory of the United States, Hawaii has grown into a modern unit of the American Commonwealth with a political, social, and economic structure of the highest type. Since this is an issue of great national importance, we know that your group is very interested in knowing why Hawaii seeks admission as a state. It is our hope that through this pamphlet, you will be able to get a better understanding of Hawaii's case for statehood. We feel we are entitled to it, and we want you as good Americans to help us get it. We would like to think that your group may desire to carry the subject further through debates, group and club discussions, campus polls, library exhibits, or the like. In any event, we are looking forward to a favorable reception of our cause, and we want you to be with us." And so he goes on to lay out some interesting things. So here's a student from Hawaii. It says, "Dear mainland student, you asked me if I think Hawaii should be made a state. In all sincerity, I do think that Hawaii should be granted statehood because anyone who has really studied the subject can't have any doubt about the right decision. When we were accepted in 1898 as a territory of the United States, we were promised that we would eventually become a full-fledged state. That was almost 50 years ago. As long as we are not a state, the civil liberties which are so important for every American, are ours only as privileges granted by the United States Congress. And these privileges can be taken away at any time without our consent. For nearly 50 years, our governor has been given his position not by vote of the people, but by the President of the United States." Remember who that was? President Sanford Dole. Do you know which Dole I'm talking about? Dole pineapple. Dole products. Yeah. So The judiciary also has been appointed by the president. Therefore, we only elect one branch of the three branches of government, the legislature. They wanted full right to vote all three legislative branches, just like we do. Many people object to statehood on the ground that 37% of this population is composed of people of Japanese origin. This object is less valid than it seems because there have been a number of studies made to determine whether either the Japanese or any other racial group here do what is called block voting. That is, whether they vote as a group. The results of these studies show that there is no extensive block voting practiced by any racial group in the territory. The members of the different racial groups are scattered between the Democratic and Republican parties, and the people quite commonly vote against candidates of their own races. The loyalty of the vast majority of the Japanese Americans cannot be questioned because they have stood the crucial test during the war better than almost anyone had dared to expect. Remember that during World War II, a lot of the Japanese people, especially on the islands, were arrested and put in jail while the war was going on because they were suspected of being spies. They have proven to the United States that their loyalty to the land of their birth is just as strong and steadfast as that of other Americans. I believe that the record of Americans of Japanese ancestry in the recent fighting constitutes an endorsement of the highest order of the American idea. To grant Hawaii statehood would extend the domestic frontier of the United States 2,200 miles to the west. It would establish a desirable precedent in granting the island peoples self-government and full protected rights, full political rights. It would be an example we could point to with pride, a wordless criticism of the colonial policy of nations which do not choose to extend to the people under them similar rights. It would mean that within the boundaries of the United States would be included a state which would set an example of full racial tolerance, a state made up of people of many races and creeds living and working together without friction. It would serve notice to the world at large that the Central and Western Pacific constitute a defense zone of the United States. How about that? A desperate plea to be recognized, to be heard from. As we know, Alaska was officially proclaimed a state on January 3rd of 1959. The Hawaii Admission Act was enacted on March 18th, 1959, and became officially effective August 21st. Ua mau, ke ea o ka aina I ka pono. To the beautiful state of Hawaii, happy anniversary. You have come through 66 years and more of brutal history, stripping away of all that was to become a commerce and trade route, a military base, and still you retain the beautiful beauty that are inherent to your native lands. Yeah. So that's your history lesson. A little bit long, but you've had class with Miss Renee. And for your homework, but not really for homework, I have some really great books that I would love to share with you. Some of these you can get online. Some of these you may have to buy from something called University of Hawaii Press. They are available online. I will be able to share the link to that in the comment thread. But one book if you really want to learn a little bit more about the history, is Hawaii's Story by Hawaii's Queen, Queen Liliuokalani. This is an account by the Queen of the difficult years at the end of the 19th century when Native Hawaiian historian David Malo, his prophecy in 1837 concerning the small ones being gobbled up came true for the Hawaiian Islands. So when this book was first published in 1898, it was an international plea for justice. Just as Admiral Thomas had restored Hawaiian sovereignty in 1843 following an illegal action, Queen Liliuokalani prayed that the American nation would do the same and reestablish the Hawaiian throne. Unfortunately, she died on November 11th, 1917, and never having any of her pleas recognized or answered. So You want to get the real story behind what happened in 1893, you can get a copy of Hawaii's Story by Hawaii's Queen, Liliuokalani. You can find this on Amazon. Some other books that I also want to share with you. And the tabs of paper so you can see it. Excuse me. This is the time of the broadcast. One of my allergies attack. You're absolutely welcome. You're absolutely welcome, Mary. You know, a lot of people don't know this about the history of the island. And very important to understand, because then when you go see things like Pearl Harbor, you see the scope of the land, you see its tactical position, you'll understand why it was so important to the Hawaiian people, not only for their resources, but for what the military wanted in being a position where they could deal with forces on both the Asian side and the mainland, the North American continent. Hawaii has such a crazy history. Yes, it does, Bear. It really does. Excuse me. Ooh, ragweed is high here. So yes, it does have an interesting history. And if you want to find out more about that, a great book I would recommend is called "Who Owns the Crown Lands of Hawaii" by John Van Dyke. This is a great story about how the lands were acquired, who owns them. You know, there was a kerfluffle with Mark Zuckerberg trying to buy up uh, lands that belonged to the Native Hawaiian people when he was expanding his home base. He's practically bought up the whole island. Um, but they went to court about it, and he backed off because he realized these lands were entrusted to the Native Hawaiian people, these families, because it was done from before Hawaii became a state. Where am I these days? I live in Dallas, Mary. I remarried in 2017 and I moved back to Dallas. So my kids still live in Nashville. Savannah's online with us now, and she actually lives in my house there in Tennessee. But yeah, I'm in Dallas now. So check out this book. It's called "Who Owns the Crown Lands of Hawaii?" Oh my goodness. Who owns a means to deal with ragweed so that I don't have these allergy attacks? And then, of course, the coffee has to start. I've got another book for you. Let's see. Here we go. This is a really interesting one. This is in depth. If you really want to learn more about the actual history part, go a little bit more in depth. This is a book called "America in Hawaii: A History of the United States' Influence on the Hawaiian Islands." This is where a lot of the history that I just gave you, you'll find more in-depth stories about that. If this is something that interests you, this would be a great book to get. So, "America in Hawaii" by Edmund James Carpenter. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. Oh, now if you have little ones, I've got some fun books that you can get them. There's a series, and they're from Hilltop Books. So there's a series, and it's called, the states and their symbols, and they have ones for all the different states. So this is the one on Hawaii. So find a book like this on, there we go, Hawaii Facts and Symbols, right? And it'll tell you all about little ones to help learn about the Hawaiian Islands, some interesting things about them. And one of them is very simple. So there's maps, map studies, and you have fun facts there. You know that Honolulu is the capital. It's the largest city in Hawaii. The population numbers are probably a little different because this book was put out in, let's see, what year did I get this? What year? This book is, 2000. 2000. So 21 years old. Used this when I was teaching my kids. So this has, talks about James Cook when he first came, right? He looks like an angry man, doesn't he? Oh, doesn't he look like a fun guy to have show up on your doorstep? right? Here we go. The state seal and motto. If you notice down here, King Kamehameha III chose the Hawaiian motto, right? And there it is on this page right here. Ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono. Notice this is 1959, and it says, the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. Kids can learn, and they even have ways to say it. So if you notice the pronunciation guide right here, Kamehameha. Love that. Because I know Hawaiian names can be difficult. The state capital and the flag, right? So they can learn all kind of interesting facts. They can learn about the nene bird, right? The official state bird. The state tree, kukui, where we get our kukui nuts. Those are large, they look like large black seeds or brown seeds, right? Or even white ones that are made in a necklace in LA. Those are kukui nuts from the kukui nut tree. From the kukui tree. The state flower, the hibiscus, right? So all of those fun facts that they can learn. Also, here's another fun one. This is a Hawaiian fairy tale. This is the Minihuni of Naupaka Village. This is a Hawaiian fairy tale. And in this story, Prince Hoku of Kauai goes to the Big Island to help Princess Lani build a new fish pond. When they are caught in a storm at sea during a search for a fish pond site, Princess Lani is seriously injured. Only a special herb grown in the Kapu region can save her life. Prince Hoku, who has fallen in love with the beautiful Princess Lani, sets out with his trusted companions to defy the Kapu, find the herb, and do battle with the savage warriors of Mu. So, a Hawaiian fairy tale. This is the Menehune story. This comes from a company called Island Heritage, and this tells the fairy tale of the Menehune people. The Menehune people, the small brown people that lived up in the mountains. My grandmother used to call me Menehune because I was her little Hawaiian granddaughter. So there you have it. Fun history about Hawaii Statehood Day. Book recommendations, if you want to check out any of those, I'll be posting the links in the comment thread. And if you're part of my VIP group, you'll get those links in our special Facebook group that I have. And also, you'll want to join me because next Saturday, I'm going to be announcing the new book that we're going to be reading for the month of September as we kick off the new month of our book club starting back. We took the month of August off so everybody could kind of get situated with starting school and getting back to normal. College starts for my daughter on Monday. We're going to roll back in. So we will start reading the book. If you want to start it on Labor Day weekend, you can. But officially, we're going to start reading it after Labor Day weekend. And I'm going to have 2 discussion times set aside where we can talk about the book. So if you want to join the book club, here's what you need to do. Go to my website, and I'll put the link right here so you can see it. You want to go to my website right here at roneharden.com/contact. You'll see where you can leave me a note. You can check a box, check through the pages book club, and then type me a little note saying, I want to be a part of the book club. I will add you to the Facebook group. You will be on my VIP email list, so you'll get all the updates about when we are starting back. I'm going to be emailing my group today to give them a preview of what we're going to be doing before we start next Saturday. So that's the benefit of being on the book club VIP email list. So go right here. You can sign up for it. And then join me back here next Saturday where we close off the month of August. And we look forward to the last 4 months of the year. Guys, it's going to be September. Have you started Christmas shopping yet? Because we're about to roll into a season of holidays and finish out yet another year. Can you believe it? Here we are. We're coming into the 9th month of the year, the last month of the 3rd quarter, and getting ready to start the 4th quarter. Are you ready? Well, we can be ready, and we're going to do that by enjoying ourselves, reading some great books, and catching up. always over coffee, right? Happy Hawaiian Statehood Day, guys. Thank you for being here live. I know we went extra long today. Um, oh, Teresa, listen, I'm so glad you were able to join too, my dear. I know it was a little long, but this is kind of what class was like with me. So if you want to learn more about that, I've got some special classes coming up later this year that I'm going to be sharing. So if you enjoyed that and want to learn, stay tuned. Get on the list. Um, oh, listen, thank you, Teresa. I'm so glad you were here. I'm so glad you were able to enjoy it. I know sometimes you are working, so I appreciate it. Especially those that come back and watch via replay. You guys, you're the heroes because you actually decide to come back and sit with me for an hour and listen. I know we went long, but this was an important day. Thanks for being here with me and listening to this. And hopefully you learned a little bit about the Hawaiian people, the aloha spirit, and the determination and the resilience of the Native Hawaiians. Because we came a long way, baby, to become a part of the United States. Let's never forget that. Let's embrace it and celebrate aloha this weekend, all right? I love you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Remember, drop me a note. Let me know if you want to find out about the book club, learn more about it, find out what's going on in my life. Please shoot me a note here. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know how I can help you. You want to tell your story because we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to be sharing a lot more towards the end of this year. Some important things that I think are important when you want to craft a great story and share your story with the world, just like the Queen did in her story, just like so many others have. You've got one in you too. I know you do. Let me help you tell it. All right. Okay, guys, that's it for this Saturday. Thanks so much for being here. As always, share your awesomeness with someone, right? Get out there and share it with someone and watch what happens. And if you can't do that and you need some company, shoot me a note. I'm always happy to chat. All right. Take care. Aloha. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here next week.